What if BLACEPHALON was in Gen 1 OU? Something that I really like about doing these videos is the fact that there's a lot of Pokemon that have pretty high stats in both attack and special attack, but for most cases, there's really no reason to use the lower stat. And I love how, because of how RBY is, with everything having max stats, there's just a lot more potential for things to be mixed attackers. And BLACEPHALON here is a really good example of that. 127 is quite honestly insane if you really think about it. Think about some decent attackers, right? Or if we're going to go with a Gen 1 perspective, think about Tauros or Snorlax. Heck, let's just look up Rhydon, because I'm pretty sure Rhydon is, 130. BLACEPHALON is close to Rhydon's attack, and it's primarily a special attacker. Why? Why does it need to do that? Or I think I know the actual reason why. If I had to guess, they probably wanted to make it like Landorus, where even though Explosion is nerfed and not as strong as it has been in other gens, they still wanted it to be strong enough to where you can kill it even without, having defense. That's my guess, but hey, good for BLACEPHALON. It can take advantage of that here. And Explosion, Explosion is really, really good on this thing. In fact, I don't think it does more than Snorlax, because Snorlax has Stab, but this might be one of the most powerful single attacks in the game. Actually, because of Snorlax using Self-Destruct, which has less base power than Explosion, and BLACEPHALON just having a naturally higher attack stat, both are probably extremely similar, which is definitely a good thing. And what's even better is that BLACEPHALON has a much higher special attack stat, because let's talk about that. 151. Ever heard of this thing called Mewtwo? It's a pretty good Pokemon, and I believe its special is 154. So you basically have Mewtwo special. BLACEPHALON right here is a really good example as to why I'm so glad these Pokemon don't have a special stat, by the way. For those who don't know, for both these videos and for my tournaments in my Discord server, they are done with Gen 1 custom games, which is something you can do right now on Pokemon Showdown if you have a friend. But when you put new Pokemon in, they still go by their special attack and special defense separately. So BLACEPHALON has a high attack stat, but it would still take a good amount of damage from any decent special attacker. And this is a classic example as to why that's better and why it's balanced that way. Could you imagine if this thing had Mewtwo special defense? It would basically be unkillable outside of Earthquakes, because it's Ghost, so you can't hit it with normal attacks. And what's Zapdos supposed to do with Drill Peck? So that's a terrifying thought to think about, but thankfully we don't live in a universe where that's the case. So what else can we talk about? Well, outside of Explosion, Fire Blast is just as dangerous since it's going off Stab and with your much higher special attack. Also helps that Fire Blast is, do I want to say at its best? I guess technically, but it might be kind of hard to rank since other gens have things like Sun Teams or Mega Charizard Y or Life Orb or Choice Specs. But at the same time, none of those gens have a 30% chance to burn. That's only Gen 1. But at the same time, how much do you want burn in Gen 1? It's good against physical attackers, but you don't want to hit Starmie or Chansey or Zam with it. I don't know, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but it doesn't really matter. Now, Psychic is a coverage option. I see some people not too impressed with it, but I don't think it's that bad. If anything, I think it's actually the perfect coverage for BLACEPHALON. It helps against Gengar, although to be fair, Fire Blast would also do good damage there. And it's probably your only real option if you want to try to face Rhydon. Although, 1, you shouldn't be facing Rhydon in the first place, and 2, you better make sure it's burned before even attempting to go for Psychic. But lastly, and most importantly, Psychic, I think, is just a good neutral option if you want to get some chip damage in, you don't want to burn things, and most importantly, special drops with BLACEPHALON are really relevant. Make Alakazam be hit with a special drop, and suddenly, Fire Blast is in a very good position to kill it. A special drop with Starmie and Chansey also gives that, some good chip, which is also good because you have a great attack stat, so Hyper Beam is very useful. Granted, it would probably be more useful if you had a physical move to go with it. I could try looking right now, but I'm pretty sure all the classic physical moves in RBY, but stuff one doesn't get. No Double Edge, not even Strength, I don't think. So yeah, that's a bit unfortunate. But on the bright side, I believe Chansey takes 53%. So it's really not hard to switch BLACEPHALON in when a Chansey's already taking some good damage. And let's talk about that typing, because Fire Ghost is... It's once again a double-edged sword. The Ghost typing is spectacular, and the Fire type is good solely because you have a great special attack stat. But Fire, it's kind of at its worst in Gen 1, I think. And that's because, one, like I said before, Burn itself is a double-edged sword, and doesn't even do an 8th damage like it used to. But also, you don't resist Ice in Gen 1. So BLACEPHALON only takes neutral from things like Blizzard or Ice Beam. Though to be fair, it's not like Charizard or Moltres. It's not weak to it, and because of that, Ice types are absolutely not staying in on you. That's just stupid. Or I guess Cloyster's the only exception maybe, but Cloyster, as you can imagine, with its low special, it's not wanting to sit in front of a Fire Blast. So, you're weak to Earthquake too, but you have burns for that. Consistent burns too, so Rhydon and Tauros kind of have to respect it. So yeah, you got some pros and cons. The last thing I'll say, and I think it's probably the most annoying thing about BLACEPHALON, 107 speed is both really good and incredibly annoying. Now with 107 speed, you have over a 20% chance to crit, which is fantastic, and you're faster than Zapdos, faster than Jinx, but you're 3 points slower than Tauros and Gengar. And Tauros is a really big deal because 3 reasons. 1, it should be on paper a Pokemon you're designed to counter against, since with your Ghost typing, you should be incentivized to switch to normal attacks. Outspeeding Tauros means they can get some good damage on you, and it means that you can't really benefit too much from burning it. And lastly, and most importantly, Tauros has about the same amount to crit as you do, so it can just completely destroy you with a critical Earthquake. At the same time, you can survive, and you're basically just as likely to kill Tauros with a critical Fire Blast. So, overall, BLACEPHALON is definitely an OU Pokemon. I don't think anyone's going to question that. And it has good things going for it, and things that I think hold it back. I don't know where it'd rank in the viability rankings. Maybe high B tier if we're just going with pure vanilla Pokemon. But it's honestly enough to where I'd say it's balanced, even though the offenses are pretty insane. Now before getting to the replays, let me just say that BLACEPHALON has actually been tested in a Gen 1 environment before. Not once, but twice. For my formats that I do in the server, Generation Jumble, BLACEPHALON has been in the Christmas season, and it's been in the one that happened more recently, which is Natdex. And here it did pretty well in both of them. Now this tier was made by Sotina, she's in my server. This was her thoughts on how BLACEPHALON does in, how it does when it comes to matchups in the Christmas season. With things like Abomasnow, Frostlass, Bronzor, does pretty well. Less so against things like Minior. And this was Riscado's, I think, Oh no, I think this was the official VR after the season ended. As you can tell, there's a lot of things here, but BLACEPHALON was in B1, so even with powerful threats like Hisuian Gudra, Hisuian Zoroark, Naganadel, it ended up doing alright. So I think that's pretty cool. At the end, after I do the normal replays, I'm going to show you 2 matches that happened in Season 5 and in the NetDex environment. But for now, let's get it right into the replays. Starting off with the boy himself, we got Tauros. Also, yeah, that looks weird. And that's because BLACEPHALON, its sprite is so tall when you put in the replays that it kind of lowers down, so you can't even see its feet. Kind of funny. And you just saw the Tauros replay. I think I already explained it perfectly. How both can 2-shot each other, and also both can OHKO with a crit. So it's a good way either way, and not much we can really say there. As for Snorlax, I think it definitely helps that you're faster, but being with the Earthquake is certainly annoying. Oh, I think most of the time, though, Snorlax just can't afford to go Earthquake on you, because a crit is just devastating, and a burn is likely, and if it's burnt, there's not much you can really do. Also worth noting that even if you don't get the burn, Fire Blast into Explosion is absolutely killing. So even if this was Amnesialax, which on paper, at the very least, should tank special attacks, that's not going to do well either. So even though Snorlax has good coverage in Earthquake, I'm going to say this is a good matchup. Because regardless of the set, BLACEPHALON can threaten Snorlax, and I think Snorlax has way more to lose. Because it can't OHKO BLACEPHALON unless it gets a crit. And with only 5% to crit, it's just not going to happen. Now moving on to Chansey, I don't really know how to rank this one, to be honest. Because all of BLACEPHALON's moves can be annoying in their own right. Granted, you don't really want a burn, but it's also worth knowing that a critical Fire Blast does 2-hit KO Chansey. Same with a uncritical Hyper Beam. And BLACEPHALON has a good crit rate. So it critting isn't even the biggest impossibility in the world. But at the same time, with that ground weakness, you paralyze BLACEPHALON and it's basically as good as dead. But again, at the same time, a special drop on Chansey leads to Fire Blast actually doing good damage. 38 is already pretty decent chip, and absolutely puts it in range of Hyper Beam. And you know what? Maybe you don't even need that, because Explosion just kills. Absolutely. So, is this a bad matchup, or is it a could go either way? I wasn't really sure. So for this, and for Pokemon you're going to see later, I once again just made a tier which is just forced to go boom. I think I'm going to start doing that more often. Or more so when I can't really tell. Because when you have an Explosion Pokemon, I think it's hard to tell if it should be could go either way or bad. Assuming the other Pokemon forces it to go for boom, you know? Now for Zam, it's already bad enough with crits and paralysis. But I will say this, you might find this interesting. Both 3-shot each other. Although for Zam, I think it's a range between 2 and 3-shot. I think I'm gonna call it a could go either way. I was gonna say it's more in favor for Zam. And with a better crit rate, special drop, and speed, that might be the case. But at the same time, BLACEPHALON can absolutely damage Zam. And with a 20% chance to crit, Hyper Beam or Fire Blast can potentially be devastating. And obviously, Explosion just kills. So I think could go either way is the way to go here. And one where I think it's too dangerous for both to really try to fight in it. The exact same can be said here with Cloyster versus BLACEPHALON. Now granted, I think BLACEPHALON is on paper the one with the advantage. Faster, better crit rate. But Fire Blast can absolutely miss. But Clamp is less accurate. And once you hit Clamp, you're not guaranteed to hit 4 or 5 times. So, it's kind of one where both hate it. But I think Persephone also has the advantage since I think it just has better longevity in my opinion. And Executor, yeah, what else do you want me to say? I guess it's a shame that with Persephone's base generation, it doesn't get Fire Spin. That could definitely help. Actually, I don't know if Persephone gets Fire Spin in later generations. Hopefully it does, but I'm pretty sure... Maybe it doesn't? Let's just keep moving. And now we have Gengar. Probably one of the more interesting ones. And I didn't realize, or I guess I kind of forgot, that Psychic has the chance to maybe two-shot with a good range. But I think because of Gengar also having Psychic and being faster with a slightly better crit rate, I think it's still a pretty even fight, all things considered. In my opinion, at least. You can disagree in the comments below, but I don't think you will. Now, I don't have much to really say here about Jolteon. It's annoying that Jolteon can paralyze you, but you absolutely have a great chance of killing it, so... It just depends on how you rank it. Normally for ghost types like Gengar, I think just threatening paralysis is enough to be good. But Persephone is just a really big threat. And even if it's paralyzed, because of how fast it is, if it's against another paralyzed Pokemon, Explosion's still a really valuable option. So, take that as you will. Now for Rhydon, like I said, you absolutely need the burn if you want to even consider taking this on. And even then, it's probably not in your favor. Now for this replay, if you get a crit, obviously Rhydon's no issue. But you don't know when you're going to get a crit now, do you? So, just try to avoid it if you can. Now, Starmie, this is the other one where I just kind of put it in its own tier. Although for this one, unlike Chansey, you don't really have a good chance of killing it no matter what. However, I think it's really important to note that no matter the damage range, Explosion is a guaranteed kill on Starmie. And that is, in fact, a really big deal. It means that Persephone can, go for any attack or Hyper Beam. Or not Hyper Beam because it won't kill, but... The point is, if Starmie is chipped or paralyzed, or if it has to go for Recover, Persephone has the option to KO Starmie at any point in the game. And I think that is huge when it comes to the context of comparing the two of them for a 1v1. I'm putting this in the same tier as Chansey, which is Force the Boom, but the KO is guaranteed. Because that's a big deal. Now last for the individual replays, and not least, is Zapdos. And I think there's advantages to both sides here. Persephone being faster is good, and Zapdos has Thunder Wave. So Persephone can usually get the first attack, but after that, it's kind of a free-for-all. Where Thunderbolt hurts if it doesn't get crit, Drill Pick hurts if it doesn't get burnt, and Persephone can get special drops or just hit super hard with Fire Blast. Could go either way in one that is... I don't think one has an advantage over the other. The only major advantages would be Persephone being faster, having a less accurate move to be a detriment, and then Zapdos being slower but has Thunder Wave. Now, like I said, we have used Persephone in Generation Jumble before. And by the way, if you're not interested in playing, but you just like hearing people talk about it or just seeing results, in the Discord server, along with the role for participant, we also have roles if you'd like to watch replays live, like, watching live battles and tournaments, and one that's solely for statistics. If you just want to see what the usage rate and win rates are, we have a role for that as well. So please, join the Discord server, because it's a lot of fun, and there's stuff you can do even if you don't just have time to play on Pokemon Showdown. Now let's watch these replays. This first one is going to be from the Christmas Jumble we did, and this is with players Rascato and Silver Nuggets. Now, these were done months ago, so for the most part, I'm reacting to this blind. We're going to have lead with, Gengar and Minior. Minior is honestly kind of decent with a pretty good crit rate, so if it got the crit there against Gengar, it would have just killed, which could have been a great way to start this. Chansey gets paralyzed. Rescata goes into Snorlax. Silver Nugget goes into Frostlass, which is definitely a good Pokemon in this format, and Frostlass being here was a great reason as to why you should probably use BLACEPHALON yourself. It's a really easy Pokemon for BLACEPHALON to kill. As you see there, even a critical Thunderbolt, BLACEPHALON only takes a 3-hit KO from. And Psychic, right there, I think kind of showed how it's a pretty good coverage option. Doing a pretty decent amount to Minior. Frostlass is unfortunately being a big hindrance here. Snorlax can't do much, and Frostlass is free to keep going for those blizzards. You don't get the kill, but neither does Snorlax. But Frostlass is faster, you're forced to switch. And thankfully, Rescata has his own Frostlass. So that's the first Pokemon KO'd. But Minior has a free switch in, but it wasn't enough to kill the Frostlass. So the Frostlass is alive, but unfortunately, Rescata didn't go for the kill, so Chansey gets an easy switch in here. At least the crit isn't doing that much. Very easy soft-boiled. Rescata's still staying in, and midway getting pretty decent chip. I think that's because Frostlass is around the same speed tier as Starmie, which is, pretty good, if you didn't know. But it's finally paralyzed. And I'm surprised Silver Nugget hasn't killed it yet. I'm curious what its actual attacking moves are. Oh wait, I think it's just trying to completely stall out blizzards. Which it managed to do pretty easily. So they finally switch and go into Minior. Thunderbolt does not get the kill. So, mission accomplished, I think? Snorlax gets an easy switch in, but Minior, I think we can say did its job. There goes Tauros, and Tauros, yeah, it's a pretty good position. They're forced to go for the mirror, which this can go either way. Rescata gets hit with Blizzard, but doesn't get the freeze. They go for Body Slam. Now it's a speed tie. But Silver Nugget goes in for Snorlax, but you miss Hyper Beam, which is actually huge in that context. Gengar has a very easy switch in. And Gengar tries to go for Hypnosis, doesn't work. Go for Explosion, doesn't get the kill. Goes back into Blacephalon. Let's not forget this was about Blacephalon. In comes Tauros. You're forced to switch. And that's another reason why, Blacephalon speed is kind of annoying. Unfortunately, Silver Nugget misses Hyper Beam. But Starmie did not wake up. This is absolutely winnable. And Silver Nugget's Pokemon is a Titan. It has Amnesia. But unfortunately, you miss Fire Blast, get killed with Earthquake. Now it's just Tauros versus the Titan, and you're not winning this exchange. You don't get the crit, the Titan kills, Silver Nugget won the game. Honestly, yeah, GG's, the both of them. That was a pretty close game. I like that a lot. One more match to watch, and then we can just show the tier list for the standard video, and then we're done. This is AJ versus Cyber DJ, and this was for the NatDex format, where it was every single Pokemon we used up until that point. So, a combination of the 6 seasons that we played. We have Lead Executor versus Starmie, and this Executor is having a horrible, horrible time. It gets put to sleep. Starmie is gonna try to wake up, but unfortunately gets hit with Explosion. But unlike Blacephalon, it's not a guaranteed kill. AJ goes into Scroll Villain, but it's just not gonna do much here. But at least there's Super Fang, that's honestly pretty cool. Scroll Villain gets paralyzed. It's gonna be weak to Ice Beam, but we have to wait and see if Chansey actually has it. Or maybe we won't. Let's actually skip this a little bit, because I don't feel like staying there. But there's Blacephalon. Unfortunately, Super Fang still hits Ghost types in Gen 1, but the lowered special's pretty good. Scorpion actually stays in, which is interesting. It's not taken out. There's Terrakion, which is faster? Or do they have the same speed stat? 314 and 312. Oh, oh, that's rough, buddy. That's super rough. But in the Shaman Sky, AJ goes. And I think it only has Hyper Beam for physical attack, so pretty dangerous, but not the most unreasonable thing. And Seed Flare, that's pretty good. Bitter Mao is lower C attack, but not sure how much is really going to help here. Cyber goes into Chansey, and Blacephalon's already dead, so actually, oh, this is pretty bad. You go for soft boiled, makes sense. Ice beam will get the kill. I don't think crit mattered there. In goes the muck. You go into your Zoroark. You're actually still alive, surprisingly. So you get a body slam, but you don't get the paralysis. Zoroark's taken out. There's the Dunsparce. They go in the Petra run. And at least you get the amnesia off, which is pretty good. But now you're toxic, which is pretty bad. But you get the freeze. That's huge. Not only that, it's not taken out. It's just Muck and Terrakion left. Sacred Swords is unfortunately super effective. You're taken out. But Gastrodon is really, really well off here. We can probably skip a bit, because this looks like it's mostly in Cyber's favor. Yeah, if it's just Gastrodon versus Terrakion, it's definitely going to be Cyber winning this exchange. Somehow got the crit, even though it's only a 5% chance to crit. So there we go, GG Cyber. But as for the normal viability, here it is. I think overall, BLACEPHALON does pretty well for itself, and I think it's also pretty fairly balanced. They didn't show Slowbro or Victory Bell or Jinx for obvious reasons. Either it just can't hurt Slowbro at all, or just one-shots with a powerful fire move. But overall, that's pretty good. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Even if you're not interested in playing in games, if you just like to watch them when they happen, or if you just like to be notified when we post the usage or viability rankings, please join the Discord server below. But until next time, this is Groundback, and I look forward to hearing from you.